This morning, I'm joined by Dan Toombs. Welcome to the Resolution Room, Dan.
Hello, Damien. How are you?
Great, mate. Now, we have a connection that goes back way beyond our professional story. We both went to a school in Toowoomba called St Mary's, which is a Christian Brothers school. But I think your path was a bit more exciting or a bit different than most in terms of your school experience.
Well, the mighty St Mary's, I've got so many fond memories of St Mary's. You know, it's probably one of those experiences where maybe it's similar for you. When I was there, I didn't sort of think too much about it. It wasn't much chop for me. I couldn't wait to get out of the place. But it kept on repeating on me years and years after, you know. And so, you know, I got great memories of St Mary's and many of the guys I hung there with and you know, relationships forged and, you know, mates ever since.
Yeah, I had a coffee recently with Simon Morrison, of course, who was 2 years older than me at St Mary's. And he made the point, which I thought was interesting, that when he came to Brisbane, people thought St Mary's was like Terrace or Nudgee. And he made the point that no, St Mary's was a school where the Harristown kids got expelled. They went to St Mary's. It wasn't a particularly polished place. And in my experience, as the guy who did drama, debating and choir in a rugby league school, I wasn't what you'd call a natural fit, if it's fair to say.
Yeah. Which was the charm of St Mary's, wasn't it? Because we were all unique and different. I mean, I'm a great lover of art, and art is very dear to me, and it was when I was a young kid too. You know, so I sort of won school award after a school award for art. And then when I was 14, the University of Southern Queensland, which I think was called the Darling Downs Institute of Advanced Education back then. And so they offered me a place in a Bachelor of Arts to go out there when I was 14. And so, you know, I went out there and had a look at these people. And of course, it was a swampy era. I don't know if you remember that, Damien, but you know, all these guys and girls wandering around with black eye makeup and dressed in black and looking like a horror movie. And it scared the hell out of me. So I sort of ran back to St Mary's and was like, no, I'm not going to do that. But, you know, in hindsight, I regret that a bit.
Yeah, so you became a lawyer, Dan, and I knew of you and your existence, and you're really involved in social justice work. Talk us through your experience as a lawyer, and then I'll get on to how accidentally but fortuitously you came into the world of digital law firm marketing.
Yeah, I think there's probably three orbits in my universe, and the first of which is creativity. The second is innovation, which is, you know, obviously creativity systemised. And then there's this third one, which is, you know, Catholic guilt, you know, social justice. And it's sort of tainted everything that I've ever done since. So I tend to gravitate between these three orbits. So my journey into law was a bit bizarre. I left St Mary's when I was probably 16, and then I bounced around for a little while, and then I came back and I was working full time at the old Courthouse Hotel. Do you remember the Courthouse Hotel?
Yeah, I do.
So I was pouring beers at the courthouse with a guy called Mark Briggs, who ended up working at Legal Aid. You know, lovely
I know
guy,
Mark. He ice baths with me.
Is that right? Well,
he's a West Ender.
There you go. Well, Briggsy was he employed me. Yeah, wonderful guy. So the courthouse in those days was just an incredible experience. You know, so I was working there. I was only 17, oddly enough, and I was working there, and then I was coming to school. And something was going to give, and of course I needed to pay the rent, and so I kept on sort of pouring beers. Another mate of mine, John Dornbush, who you probably know as well.
Yep.
John was a great mentor for me for many years, and so John said to me when I was sort of 18, 19, he said, "Listen, you know, there's a economic reckoning about to happen called a recession." And you better get yourself sorted, because if you don't, you're going to be left out to dry. So from that experience, I went to Gundawindi, which where my parents were. They were school teachers. And I did grade 12 out there. I was at that point 19 years of age. And so did that and came out with flying colours with the intent of perhaps doing med, but fell short. I had a 960 TE score, and I don't know, sort of got to the end of that and was pretty deflated and thought, okay, what next? And so, a couple of different things, and ended up doing law.
That's a great story, Dan. I hadn't heard that bit, so thanks for that. And then in terms of your legal career, you're really involved in social justice initiatives and law reform. And now, of course, you're running Practice Proof. And so talk us through that journey. And we spoke offline, and it was quite in a sense, accidental but fortuitous, particularly when you look at the parameters around your life. What did you call them? Innovation,
Creativity, innovation, and social justice.
Catholic guilt / social justice.
I think very unorthodox sort of journey into law in that I'm studying, but while I was doing that, I was working at a homeless men's hostel, and I did that for years, and when I wasn't working at the hostel, I'd go and hang with Terry O'Gorman. And of course, we all know who Terry O'Gorman is, great civil libertarian, great criminal lawyer. And I just love the cut and run of crime, and it sort of fitted in with some of the social justice ideals for me as well. So I was, always fascinated by it. I think what then happened for me was I knew I had to get, just into traditional practice, and a couple of guys, Simon Morrison and Steve Roach, who I knew from St Mary's, gave me a start at Shine Roach McGowan, which was a very small personal injury. In fact, I think it was a general practice at that point. We had all sorts of odd bods, doing different things, and I was a part of the team. So it was just an incredible experience. But, strange as it was, when I wasn't doing file work, and I think I had about 85 files, I was actually crafting ad copy for the guys. And, they were just starting to spawn this idea of perhaps becoming a bigger player in personal injury law. And I'm crafting, ad copy. Every now and then it would run. Sometimes Steve and Simon would go, "What are you doing? That's crazy. That's not going to run." But so I was interested in it, and it was just that creativity bent, manifesting once again, and it was a huge thrill to be a part of that. But ultimately, it didn't really fit with me in the long term, and I ended up, going back to some more social justice orientated roles and worked for the Drug Court of Queensland.
Right, and then in terms of the formation of Practice Proof, Dan, and I guess this is the innovation part of the story and the creativity lining up. At what point did that merge and you thought, right, I'm going to now work with lawyers that are your people and help them build an online presence and a business? Where did that story start?
Well, it sort of came through, when I left working with the drug court, and I'm only sort of, at this point, 30 years of age, sort of a young buck. And there was a lawyer who was a human rights lawyer, a guy called David Curtis. And Curtis had this really big bent towards disability and crime. So he had this, strong sense that people with mental health and intellectual disabilities were being, unjustly done by the system. So he encouraged me to come and work with him. And as sort of fate would have it, David unexpectedly died, and I ended up sort of running this advocacy service, and part of that was doing systemic and law reform in that space, which I did. We took a case to the Court of Appeal. Legislation was changed. I wrote a book about it. It was published by Thomson Reuters, and so it was this sort of this innovations sort of thing happening for me. The interception, I suppose, of the digital came when I went to New York on a Winston Churchill Fellowship, and I was working over there with a place called the Centre for Court Innovation. And the Centre for Court Innovation were doing some amazing stuff around therapeutic jurisprudence, which I just loved. It was just so good, treating criminal courts as less punitive and more therapeutic, which was just magnificent. At that time, I sort of inherently knew that this digital space was starting to emerge. And of course, I'm over there, and Obama's running, his first campaign. And it was just all social media and digital led. So I bounced back to Australia. I started a thing called the Queensland Criminal Justice Centre, which was this online training portal for judges and lawyers who are working in that space. And that thing won a bunch of awards. And then oddly enough, I had a few firms, including Shine, come to me and say, hey, can you help us with this thing called digital strategy, which of course I didn't really know what that was. I probably knew, a little bit more than what they did at the time, but there was a business there, and that's 20 years ago.
That's a great story. So you're really at the forefront of the emergence of digital strategy and marketing in law firms in Australia, really. And I agree, I'm a keen student of politics, and that Obama campaign was fascinating in terms of a turning point of I guess, digital marketing. So you were seeing that all close up. And then it was people were knocking on your door and you thought, right, a business spawned.
Yeah, that's right, absolutely. And before I knew it, I had some big players, come to me and say, "Can you help us with this digital strategy?" And I had to sort of pull together a crack team to enable it, which was amazing. Yeah.
And I wanted to then talk to you about, Dan, the points around strategy and digital marketing. I've got a confession. The confession is I kind of like marketing, and not a lot of lawyers could say that, but I agree with you in the sense that to me it's about creativity and building. And so there's a side of me that's really drawn to it and enjoys looking at it. I guess some of the things I've seen from you online is, don't have a helter-skelter approach, don't look for the sugar hits, really embed a long-term brand strategy. Is that something that was organically developed in terms of your working with businesses?
I think it's derives from just working over 20 years with legal practices, and you see over time what works and actually what doesn't. But I'm also probably a little bit like yourself and anybody that's legally trained. If I want to know about criminal law, I go to Carter's. So for me, I really wanted to do work that was always grounded in academic rigor. And so my strategy work is always a derivative of the people who know about it. Then that's the starting point.
You've obviously invested in really understanding the academic strain. You haven't just gone out there with your own ideas. You've really invested in your own development about strategy and marketing and what works. Talk us through your story there, Dan. How's that come about?
Law firms they're different to other businesses. I think that, I like the work of Michael Gerber, who wrote the E-Myth book, which essentially says that, most people start businesses as technicians. They have very little understanding about running a business. And, that happens with legal practices, every day of the week. You'll get a person who's been working with a law firm or working in a law firm for, 10 years. They want to start their own for a variety of reasons. They want more lifestyle. They want to be, on the treadmill. So they start a practice, and then they get some organic referrals. Things happen sort of slowly. And before you know it, they get a bit more, and then they've got some other mouths, that they've got to feed. And then things become a lot more crucial around how we're going to grow. And I think the biggest mistake that they make at that point is they go and listen to people who just don't really know, and they fumble and fall over.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a lot of failed experiments. So the way you work with firms is very much about that strategic underpinning from the outset.
Yeah.
And a sense, it's kind of, when I read your material, it's about playing the longer game of brand recognition and distinctiveness. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a great lover of the work of Les Burnett and Peter Fields, and both marketing guys out of the UK. And basically, what these guys said after oodles and oodles of research was that successful brands play the long and the short. And the short being those are trying to target those that are in market today. So if you're a family law firm in Brisbane, you're wanting to attract those clients right now that need you. That's well and good, but it's only 3% of the market. The other 97% are out there. And so the long's that.
Yeah. The long is so that you are top of mind when a problem emerges 2 years later. So it's kind of a positioning game, a momentum game, so that you're capturing that longer term. One of the things I've heard on your videos, clearly I've watched quite a few of them, is this notion of, which I like because I think it's really interesting. This kind of traditional law firm view that we've got to have a point of difference. Now, I'm not downplaying the importance of, but, you read the same stuff, personal expertise, delivered at cost and accessible, and that are all good things. And I'm not saying some people don't do that better than others. They certainly do. But the way I look at some of your thinking, it's been, well, that's great, but it's really more important to be distinctive. Can you talk us through that compared with, if you like, a point of difference approach?
It's very hard to be different in law. Legal practices are all saying the same things, and lawyers they'll make mistakes thinking that, oh, well, look, I'm an accredited specialist, or I've got 35 years experience, or, I'm the one of hundreds that have got a Doyle's Award. They're not points of differentiation. At the end of the day, you're selling what everyone else is selling. So the way you break through this, and maybe Shine's a good example of this, and I think Shine did it really, really well. Shine, when they entered the personal injury law space, a small firm, and they played the long and the short beautifully. They had distinguishable brand assets, notably a bulldog that was just so off market at the time. It's just crazy. They had this bulldog, I think it was called Rupert, and Rupert would be on TV as billboards tearing out a piece of rope, and the copy was "Tough case, we're tougher." And they belted that home just day after day. Everywhere you looked, you couldn't miss it. And so that was about building brand salience. That's the long. That's very different to the short. And so the point I'm trying to make here is that when you do that over a long period of time, your brand sticks. So when people think of those category points like I need a personal injury lawyer, they go, shine, because I've seen it so many times.
Yeah. It's about distinctiveness and salience.
Yeah, exactly. Huh? And that's the work of a lady called Jenny Romniak out of the Ehrenberg Bass Institute in Adelaide. Just incredible research. And, everyone should read Jenny's work. I mean, it's amazing, but that's exactly what she says.
Right. And the other thing that I liked, and I was attracted to it when I started this business and made a transition, is the notion of the story brand, or is that how you call it? Like, I think this is a useful analysis for people to think about, is that the client is the hero and you are the guide effectively in professional services. That's something that I think has really stuck with me in terms of, and you've done some formal training in that space as well and really looked at that.
Yeah,
huh?
that's right. Yeah, I was trained by Don Miller in the US and active member of StoryBrand for many years. And, Don would essentially say, and it plays beautifully with legal practices because lawyers tend to think that it's all about them. So, you'll go to a law firm's website and the first thing you see is 9 lawyers spread across the homepage. And you just go, really? And typically they're 9 males. You just lost, a significant portion of people who want to engage. So StoryBrand's about coming from marketing through the client voice, not your own voice.
Yeah, the client voice, the client story. They're the hero in their story. So help me with this, Dad. So now as a mediator, my clients more prominently are law firms and lawyers who are looking to retain someone who's credible. So really, if I look at the StoryBrand approach to marketing with me as a guide, their pain points are protracted litigation, costs that are maybe building up. They want to get paid. They want to move on. They want to get their client a result that is good and they can live with. So that's really about looking at the world through their lens, not through the world of, listen, I'm an expert, I'm accredited, I've got this qualification from Harvard, wherever it is. It's really about what problem you're trying to solve for them and how do you make them front and centre. Is that how you'd look at, say, my approach as a mediator?
I think that's true. I mean, yours is a little bit different in that, the lawyers who want to engage with you are certainly those that want to know your stripes. They want to know that you've done hundreds of these things and that you're special in that respect. But, for clients that want to engage a law firm, they don't really care that you're an accredited specialist. I mean, I know lots of lawyers will say, oh, that's just outrageous. How can you say that? I worked with one law society a bunch of years ago who were trying to address that very issue. It was like, we want to be able to articulate or define this characteristic of accredited specialists a bit better. And of course, it was a failure. Nobody knows what it is. If I'm a person on the street and I haven't got a clue in the world, why should I choose that person over somebody else? So it's probably a great illustration of where you get things so fundamentally wrong.
Yeah, and you're almost like making the mistake of preaching to your profession rather than, because it's about professional credibility or standing within it, rather than a broader audience / client, really, at some level. That seems to be the fundamental.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Dan, you're now got a very mature business and been doing this for a long time, and you work internationally as well. A lot of the audience that will listen to this will be lawyers. Are you seeing different approach in the Australian landscape compared with the US and UK? Are there key differences, or are you working quite similarly?
I think similarly. I mean, years ago there was a stronger demarcation between, say, Australian firms and US firms. US firms typically were just so woeful at marketing. And there's some standouts. I mean, I really like the work of Morgan & Morgan, which is a massive PI firm. I think they just do brand assets and brand strategy extraordinarily well. By and large, I think the divide between them has come together. I mean, we're all worrying about the same things.
Yeah.
All worried about the emergence of AI, worried about what that means in the broader context of marketing and driving new business for law firms. It's rapidly changing.
You brought me to that point, which we need to go there, obviously.
Yeah.
That is, you've been in this space. You saw, right at the outset in digital marketing, the emergence of SEO. And now we're at another inflection point, aren't we? And now it seems like a major change, the most seminal change in many respects. Talk us through that. Are we seeing the death of SEO, or where are you now pivoting your business?
Look, I think you're right. I think that SEO has certainly been challenged. I think that the broader confrontation is around this thing called zero clicks. So people increasingly using the likes of ChatGPT and Google AI overviews to form the foundation of their knowledge about their legal issue. And then, of course, getting recommendations of who the best lawyers are. Now, those signals that AI will, aggregate and pull into its ecosystem are very, very different to SEO. So it's a new discipline completely.
How are you investing in understanding that better and working with your team?
Well, it's certainly still embryonic. Our SEO team, we've now emerged into AEO. There's no doubt about that. We've got a bit of software out there at the time that is covertly sending these signals to AEO platforms like ChatGPT and others. But I think, to be fair, I don't think anybody's got a good grip on this, even though some will say that they do.
Yeah, I tend to think that's right. And it's going to emerge and going to change so quickly, as long as you're thinking about it and across it. But I have noticed the old rules of Google searching and SEO seem to be being diluted fairly significantly. And I think it's probably going to happen reasonably quickly, won't it?
Yeah, we're starting to see that with, we look after maybe 40, 45 law firms, both nationally in the US, and we're already seeing the stuff in the data where there's a significant portion of traffic coming to their website via ChatGPT.
Yeah.
The real worry, of course, is when they don't come to the website. They make decisions based on, bizarre recommendations of ChatGPT who might say that, just because a lawyer's got a Doyle's Award or be an accredited specialist, that they're a better lawyer than somebody else. We know that that's not true.
Yeah, one of the things that I think I also get from your work is the importance of transparency and data. You're very firmly grounded in business. Marketing is about actually, how it drives revenue and how you can track that. And if you can't measure it, you'll never know, and there'll never be any accountability. That's been a really important driver in your work as well and with your clients, huh?
Yeah, massive. I think, one of the rhetorical conversations I have with law firms month after month for years and years was, how was the month? And they say, well, the month was pretty good. We opened a few files. I was like, great. How many? 23. Great. Where do they come from? I don't know. No idea. Okay. Right. So we're spending 20K or 30K per month on Google Ads. We know we've converted this many, but how many converted into files? Don't know. How many came from Meta or Facebook? Don't know. And that still happens to this day. So we created our own software, LawDash, that just tracks everything. So, complete 360 transparency, I can tap in now and I can tell you, I'll look at the phone rang for that law firm 3 minutes ago and it came from this particular marketing channel.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that is the sort of rigor that you need. So sadly, we're running out of time, but that was a great conversation. One of the things I wanted to talk about what's next for you, but I really like the way you talked about those core attributes that have guided you, innovation, creativity and social justice. So looking at the world through that lens, the three pillars, where to next for you, Dan, and practice proof, and what are your plans going forward for the business?
Well, we're certainly still doing what we've always done, and we've got the new frontier that we've got to navigate, which is hugely confronting for our clients as well. So we're all about co-creation in this new space, which is just full to the brim with opportunity and challenges. Yeah.
Thank you for the support, mate, that you've provided me and I picked your brain on a few things, and I've really enjoyed looking at your business from afar as former Toowoomba boys. It's amazing, from that little school in Toowoomba, there's been some pretty impressive people that emerged from that environment. So, and it's great to hear all those old names that I'd forgotten about, including I didn't know you're friends with Mark, who's a good friend of mine, actually. So worlds coalesce, hey? And
indeed. And the brothers and their little pieces of advice over a school desk still sort of rattle between the ears and still sort of shape a few things that I do, that's for sure. So, a completely amazing experience in many respects, yeah.
All the best, Dan. I really appreciate your time and expertise and look forward to seeing your continued growth and presence.
Thanks, mate.